Welcome, my stars of Orion. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Orion Kelly, that autistic guy. I'm all about providing validation and support for autistic people and their loved ones. Have I got an inspirational neurodivergent guest for you? Carolyn Sophia. She's an author, public speaker on breaking mental health stigma, and a fantastic person to talk to. Carolyn, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. Hi.
Hey, it's great to have you, and thanks for taking the time to have a chat to us. Let's start with everyone watching who was part of, obviously, the YouTube community that we have going. Might not know your story. Some may well. Instagram, those kind of places, TikTok. But for those that don't, tell us your story, Carolyn. What's you in a nutshell?
Well, to start off my story is I always felt as a kid very misunderstood. I felt like I was overanalyzing situations, and I wasn't until I was 16 years old where I found out I had nonverbal learning disability, which is where you're highly verbal, but you struggle with spatial awareness, and you struggle sometimes with internalization, and I could go on, but there's just a couple of struggles that I have to deal with every day.
Yeah. And how did that diagnosis get you to where you are today? So in other words, tell us a bit about you and what you do now with your life.
Yeah, so I am a public speaker and an author. I wrote my first book, Unbreakable, which is about mental health. It's about my journey. Part of it is about my NVLD, but I really am passionate about helping people feel less alone and feel like people hopefully can feel like they're loved and know that they're enough. Because when I was growing up, I have the most amazing, incredible, supportive family, but I really struggled in school socially. I didn't really have friends. When I first found out I had my nonverbal learning disability, I was a sophomore in high school. And the only reason I didn't know I had it for so long was because I had so many tutors and I worked so hard in school, 10 times harder than most. And I, somehow, it got to the point where I wasn't doing too well, and I did this testing, and the testing revealed, you have nonverbal learning disability. So when I first found out, I was kind of beside myself because, let's be honest, when you first found out you have a disability, you're like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? What? And
yeah.
So, it took me years, I'm 27 now, but I, really kind of struggled with that at first. I struggled with anxiety and depression. And as I got older and, I went to boarding school because I found out with that nonverbal learning disability, I wasn't going to be able to do as well at the school I was at. And my goal was college at the time. So I went to boarding school, and boarding school, was what it was. I honestly am thankful for it at the end of the day. But when I went to college, I thought it was going to be the best 4 years of my life. It wasn't. I didn't fit in. I didn't have friends. It was just a really miserable experience for me. And so one fall night, I did almost take my life, but my best friend in the entire world called me at the right moment. And because she called me, she saved me. And then, I was really struggling with mental health issues and really kind of my self-identity and my worth and just everything with that. And then fast forward to my senior year of college, I got into a life-threatening car accident where I grabbed my seatbelt seconds before the crash. I could have died and gone flying through the windshield. I somehow didn't, by the grace of God. And I, had a second chance at life, and that was kind of what inspired me to use my voice and to write my book, Unbreakable, because I had always felt different my whole life. And I was like, I feel really good right now. I feel so blessed and lucky to be here. The gratitude, just the whole new perspective of life changed, and that's kind of what led me to writing Unbreakable.
Okay, so you've come to my channel, so Carolyn, that we get real here, my friends. We really dig deep and get real. So I know you're prepared. You're not holding anything back. But so the first thing I want to say is everything you said was so relatable to me as an autistic person with my not only my feeling of growing up, but also my educational experiences. And I have a 10-year-old autistic son, and like you, he's only in grade 5, but he sees many additional people in school hours at school to help him along the way, but it still doesn't mean he's caught up, right? And so it's kind of like, it must be debilitating for a little 10-year-old dude. And as parents, you're just constantly concerned, can we get him there? Because he has aspirations like you did. And I think what I found fascinating was, you made it very clear that you have a great family, great support group. There's no issues there. But then you told a story of a very distressing, intense, troubled life growing up, which said, on one hand says, I'm really grateful for my family, but on the other hand says, but I still had a really hard life growing up, as a young girl and then a young woman, and that can really resonate with a lot of people. But in saying that, I can tell you, firsthand, and a lot of people in the community, don't have good relationships with their parents because of their differences and their things. So it's fascinating to me that you've experienced a similar growing up that we have, but you have a great relationship with your family, which, you can understand why some might not, because they they take on the burden that if you're autistic or you're different or you're struggling, it must be my fault because I made you. And therefore, I can't deal. You're too much. You're too different. It's too stressful. And maybe it's because I don't want to look in the mirror. But from your point of view, how did you go from having such a great supportive family but still wanting so hard to help people who don't have that? When do you see what I'm saying? It's like, well, you experienced it, but you had this passion to help people who didn't have a similar situation. But then people will go, well, what would you know? So I feel like, well, you would know. You must have known. There's things you did experience or go through that wanted you, that made you, that drove you to help those people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing about me is that, and I really emphasize it a lot, but I really did always feel like the outsider. I was not popular in high school. I didn't have a lot of friends. I didn't really know where I fit in. I internalized everything. The wrong look, they hate me. The whispering, it's about me. And so it just kind of really triggered this feeling in me, especially when I was, 15, 16, 17, to be like, why am I not fitting in here? You haven't fit in your whole life. The only place you fit in is with your family. And even having the most loving, supportive family, I'm so grateful that they were supportive, because I do know not everyone has that. But, it's amazing because my family sees it as like, this is you, Carolyn. You might struggle with spatial awarenesses. And yes, we might have to repair the car from running into a pole because of your spatial awareness. But it's like, they accept it. And I think that that's just something everyone deserves to have, no matter who you are or what your life is like. You deserve to be accepted for who you are. And that's kind of really, I think, what stemmed from it, subconsciously. But I think what really, really made the reason of wanting to help people was because I had known for so many years what it's like to struggle silently. And, learning more about nonverbal learning disability, I realized that it's all connected. And so because I had anxiety and depression, it was amplified, the feeling. So that was very hard. But I think that after the car accident, I realized I was grateful to be alive. I had struggled for so many years. I was done being silent. I was done not talking or speaking up. I realized that my voice actually mattered. And that's really how it came into wanting to help people.
I definitely want to get to that turning point in your life, but first I want to just pick your brains prior to that. So, you're this young woman even young girl in school, young woman in the later stages of high school, and you're in boarding school, you're looking to go to college. So how did NVLD? Because this is something I'm fascinated about. How do you think, whether it's undiagnosed or diagnosed at the point in your life, how do you think NVLD manifested, or how did it cause you to feel like you did not fit in, or they were whispering about you, or you would not look differently? How do you feel like those struggles happened? And also, what was going through your mind? What did you try to do to fix that?
Well, to start off, I was bullied from a young age. And with having NVLD and not knowing back then, I, of course, internalized it and was like, I got a death threat in 3rd grade. Like, what's wrong with me? Why don't the kids like me? Why doesn't anyone want to play with me? So it just manifested itself as I got older, because it was like this whole concept of telling myself that you're never going to be enough. You're never going to measure up. You don't fit in with these kids. They don't like you. You don't get asked to dance at the 8th grade dance. Like, I literally had this feeling of internalizing from a young age. When I was a kid, I would worry all the time something bad would happen, even if there was no rational reason to think so. And I think it really, it started young, but it kept progressing. And I think that's really where it came from.
Help me understand though. So let's put yourself in the shoes of these other students. From what, and obviously you're going through your brain. What was it about you? This is what I understand. See, I mean, you're different, but what was it about you that was different? Why? Death threats is incredible. I mean, we've all kind of experienced that from my experience with those types of feelings. Right. People don't just not be your friend. They actually will start a club. Like Orion's a horrible person club or something. I mean, it's not even a joke. So can you put me in their shoes? What are the things that made you stick out, not fit in? Why didn't they like you? What were the things that manifested? It's strange to me.
Yeah, it is strange. For me, the boys in 7th grade like to call me Marvin the Martian, because apparently I had frizzy hair, yellow teeth, and a giant nose. So then from that point on, I hated my nose. And I really do blame that for, it took me years of therapy and working through it to accept myself for who I was. But that's just the thing is, people need to accept themselves for who they are and embrace who they are, because we're all different for a reason, and it would be really boring if we were all the same. Looking back
prior to, as you're starting to grow up and become more mature, looking back for, this is obviously great for women and mums and kids that are watching. Do you remember the lengths of which you went to try and fit in, to change yourself, to fix yourself? Is that something you can experience? Because I'm sure people can relate to that.
Yeah. I remember in high school, it was really 9th grade, but it was just when Instagram was coming out, and I would have to make sure that I perfect 365'd my picture so that my teeth, my face, everything would look edited, because I felt like that was what was pretty, or like that was what was going to be accepted, and that was what everyone else was doing. So I was like, well, if I do this, then maybe I'll be accepted. But in reality, all I was doing was telling myself that I wasn't enough as I was, and that I needed to change myself, which that was never true. Like, I never needed to change myself because I was amazing how I am. It just took me a long time to see it.
I totally get that. I've been there. I totally get what you're saying. And I understand, how hard that can be. But what I think is fascinating is, you were a girl with a plan, right? You were a girl with a plan. Maybe too young. Okay, so I'm going to do this. I'm going to get these scores. I'm going to go to this college. I'm going to do this. It sounded like you were a girl with a plan. And I think...
Not fully.
But you definitely wanted to achieve something. I can't even imagine... for example, me or my son with a neurodivergent brain navigating boarding school. That's a massive sacrifice for your future. I don't even, it blows my mind, mate, to even think that you did that and you survived that. What was that okay? Was it better than the local school?
So here's how I'm going to honestly answer that question. It was very isolating. It was very lonely. I missed my family a lot. It was just, the same day over and over, because obviously, you have a lot of kids with different learning disabilities, so they need a routine every single day, always a schedule. But I think that, when I think about the independence it gave me, and when I also think about, one of my best friends I'm still friends with to this day, I never would have met her if I didn't go there. So, I see it as, actually it was a positive, but going to boarding school, that was a very hard conversation. And that was something that, kids asked me all the time, I've gotten like, oh, did your parents ship you off? And I said, absolutely not. They were going to move to Connecticut, actually. But the admissions lady advised against it. And I'm glad they didn't have to, do that to sacrifice. But they did sacrifice a lot of time to come and see me and really, make sure that I was okay. Because I was still struggling.
I'm glad you mentioned that too, because I guarantee there are people watching going, yeah, your parents shipped you off. I mean, like, I'm guarantee people are thinking that, right? I mean, I'm not saying I would, but, if there was something where my 10-year-old autistic son could go, let's sign him up. Get him in there now. No, but seriously, I'm glad you brought that up. But, okay, so let's talk about that. It was isolating. And in addition to that, this is the period of your life where, it started to impact your mental health. Is that correct? This period of your life?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so when you look back, how do you put that together? Was it a perfect storm? Did it manifest over time? How do you think you got there into that kind of mental space?
I think it was a lot of little things that just added up that I never actually took care of, or trauma that was unhealed. Because, I think that I didn't realize until years later through therapy, but a lot of this was unraveled from 3rd grade, and it all stemmed from that one experience. And so then when things kept happening, that made me see, oh wait, because of this situation, this proves I'm not enough, or this proves that. And so I would tell myself all these false things, and it was never intended to get that bad. I never in a million years thought I would have ever, done any of that unhealthy coping or anything like that. And, that was debilitating to my mental health whenever I started to see groups and people form their people, and I didn't have it. I wasn't the girl with the boyfriend. I wasn't the girl who was invited to the parties. Like, I literally remember walking through the halls and just trying to be just to be isolated, just to make it through the motions, both at boarding school and at public school. It was just I just got to go through the motions. And so that could definitely be identified as, yes, it was a hard time.
From a very early age, you realized that the world at large saw you as different, and they, in addition to that, as a result of that, they decided that you don't fit in here, so you can't be a part of us. And therefore you were starting to work out, okay, I'm different. I don't fit in. I'm kind of not meant to be here. What's wrong with me? And that was something you were really navigating, your whole life. That's a big realization to have as a kid, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. It's, sometimes I feel like I didn't give myself enough childhood because I was always worried about the next thing.
Isn't that a relatable story to really anyone who is different in some way or another? You look back at at what you've done, and you when you were in that kind of boarding school, that phase where you were starting to have mental health issues. You talked about ways you tried to mitigate it or medicate it, or the different ways you try to explain it. Did you find yourself trying things that you never would have thought you would do to try and self-medicate or soothe yourself or get yourself out of it? Or how did you, before you turned it around, how hard did it get for you?
Well, I don't want to trigger anyone, but I was self-harming. It got to that point. I really, really was struggling with the feeling of feeling different, of not feeling enough, of feeling like it's just never going to be me. I'm never going to be chosen, all this stuff. And it did escalate to the point where I truly hated myself. I was like, you're different. You have this learning disability. People hate you. Just telling myself all these lies and believing them, and just turning into this toxic cycle. And I'm just thankful I'm not there anymore. In that phase, I want to talk about you kind of as you progressed in life, but at that phase, did you question things? For example, if you were brought up, in a family who was, had faith in their life, you were religious or deeply religious, or you believed in things. Did you question why would you do this to me, or why do I have to be like this, or? Yeah. Or I'm not supposed to do these types of things. This is bad in the eyes, of God if I act like this. Did you go through? Yeah. I grew up, with faith and with church in my life. And then, when I was in college / high school and started to steer away from it, because I did say, I was like, well, if God was real, I wouldn't be hurting myself. If God was real, I wouldn't be doing all these horrible things to myself. If God was real, why did he have to give me this LZ? So it was just this toxic cycle of just of how I thought of life and never really thought of anything positively. But yeah, I did really struggle. And faith is actually something that, I truly see the car accident as God giving me my second chance at life. That's what I tell people because I truly, fully believe that.
The boarding school years and all the challenges you went through, most people would say, okay, so you obviously didn't do very well and you didn't get into college because that was what normal. But see, you're not a normal person. This is where it starts to become, you're not a normal person. And guess what? You could achieve things. So how was the journey from boarding school to like higher education to college? Was it easy? Was it an easy transition? And what were you studying? Why did you want to study that? Where did you go? I want to know all those details.
So I actually, it's so funny though, because looking back, my parents did say, do you want to apply to any schools in Pittsburgh, which is where I'm from? And I said, nope, absolutely not. And they were like, are you sure? And looking back, it's like, I should have because I came back. But I went to this school called John Carroll in Ohio for a semester. And that was when I realized I made the biggest mistake of my life because it was like high school. I thought transitioning was going to be a lot easier, but it was very cliquey. People had their cliques. People talked bad about me. Like, I didn't have like people to go to the dining hall with. I barely went, I was really, really in a bad place. And then from there, I somehow made it through that semester without pulling out of the college, but then I transferred back to Pittsburgh and I went and graduated from Chatham University.
So you got it to the end. You made it to the end. You did what you said you were going to do, which, by the way, is a great achievement. Like, obviously you understand that, but it's important you do actually understand that. I don't mean this in I'm trying to be nice to you. I'm saying it's actually a great achievement. I mean, it's one thing to get into uni or college, but to see it through and to finish it as a neurodivergent person is incredible.
In 4 years.
Which is, again, incredible. I'm always obsessed about inclusions and disability support services in universities and things because I experienced it and they just were so bad. I'd love to know what the mindset is over there. So from my point of view, here's how Australia works basically. Hi, I'm autistic. Okay, great. Disability support services are here to help. And what we're going to do is we'll give you an extra week for all your essays or assignments in semester. And at the end of the semester, we'll give you 10 minutes extra per hour for your exams. And now my issue was, okay, great. But if you're not going to help me during the semester to learn the content in a way that's right for me, it doesn't matter if I have an extra 10 minutes or an extra week because I don't know the stuff. And then it becomes a vicious cycle. So, it's kind of unacceptable. So how did you find navigating college with NVLD, and also was there any things that actually helped?
Yeah, I mean, I did get the extra time, but like you said, it's literally 10 minutes. It's only half the time extended, so it's really not that much time. But I did have that as an option, and then I did, work a lot with my professors. I usually, most days, I kind of would just work on the work at the library and just really focus. But I did go to my professors a lot. I, did sometimes have to go to them 2, 3, 4 times to actually get something because part of NVLD is sometimes you need to reread something over and over because comprehension can be a little challenging. And so, that was definitely very helpful. And of course I had a couple tutors as well, especially for econ. But, making it through, it is funny that you say that because sometimes I do forget, I made it through college and I did it in 4 years and I did a summer semester just so I could graduate in 4 years because it was really important to me graduate in 4 years. I wanted to prove to myself that even with everything, I could do it, and I proved it to myself.
Well, it is. I mean, frankly, it is. And you have to acknowledge that in a non-smiley, I'm just trying to be nice way. Seriously, man, that's good for you, and I mean that in a legitimate way. That not because not because I'm trying to talk to you like a kid or something. I'm saying no, hell no. I've been there. I know how hard it is, and to get to the end, good for you. I mean, you can imagine me. I'm trying to, and not that I don't think autistic people can't relate to what you feel. NVLD is a very common experience for autistic people. Can you imagine reading law textbooks? I had to read law textbooks times 4 units per semester, I'm reading contract law, I'm reading criminal law, I'm reading trusts and equity, and I'm thinking, and there's no way my brain could understand it. And then you're in the library. I'm thinking, she's in the library? What is she, crazy? You got like 400 people. Stop! It's a keyboard! Are you trying to break it? What's happening? Tick, tick, tick. I couldn't read. I had to go home. I legit had to study at home. I couldn't. Uni, there's nothing about uni that's inclusive for anyone who has any kind of, sensory sensitivities, because I would try to read textbooks between classes in the library, and I realized what my brain's picking more up on everything around me than what I'm reading. And I could never read something once. Probably like as you experience, for me to understand something, I couldn't ever read it once. I would need to, do so many different things. And then even then it'd be hard to, to remember things. But I'd love to know from you, with NVLD, what were the core things that, experiencing that you made your experience hard? Like what you talked about reading and, remembering, but I'd love to get an insight into how that manifests.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely would say, in college, econ, math, science, those were always my worst subjects. They're really hard for me. Numbers I can't do for my life, even to this day. I'm still learning. I still have to use my phone as a calculator for like the tip and stuff, because, I still sometimes miss those numbers. But, I will also say too, when I was in college, I kind of forced myself, like I would go to the quiet floor, or I would get like a room. And that would kind of force me, and I would tell myself like 30 minutes, because I'm not someone who can do 5 hours, So I was like, okay, you're going to do 30 minutes here, and then we're going to go to the coffee shop. And then I spent a bunch of time at our local coffee shop, and I would just do so much typing there. For some reason, it just like really worked. So for me, it kind of was just about figuring out the environment of where I was going to study best, of where I was going to just be successful and not, get distracted, because I do sometimes, like you said, it's very easy to be like, oh, like what's going on? Everyone's typing loud. Like, what
about the teaching environment? Like in Australia, where, you can have big lecture halls and there's lots of people, and then the professor comes in, puts on a bloody slideshow from the 1950s, and then they're talking and they're looking at a slideshow, and people are constantly typing. And how did you find your learning environment for you?
Yeah, that's definitely was challenging. I mean, when there were things that I was absolutely not interested at all in, it was very hard to force myself to pay attention. But I did always try to take notes, which I think is something that you kind of have to do with NVLD, because to process all of it, like you can't, like you're going to have it all and then look it over later to really understand, not just, hear one thing one time and then that's it. So, I did try to take a lot of notes. That was a huge thing. I also did have a note taker as an accommodation, so I could have that as well. I didn't fully use that, which sometimes I'm like, maybe I should have, but that was an option because of, with my accommodations of NVLD.
I love that, though. I mean, I think people should take notice of that one, and you should have used it more. Absolutely. I mean, I would have used it for my shopping list. I come over here, I'm going to put a list. I mean, no, but you should have. And frankly, in my uni, I think, only like vision impaired, right? Vision impaired people might have had that service. And now I look back and I think, well, hang on, that doesn't make any sense. See, I found those situations overwhelming in the respect that if you have a professor who's talking to you, but then also showing you slideshows, I have to try and work out, well, what am I going to focus on, if that makes sense? Am I going to block their voice out? Am I going to and then people get obsessed about looking at the slides. Well, I'll just copy paste the slides into my notes, but that made no sense. So, these kind of situations I found really, really hard to navigate.
Oh, they are.
Yeah.
They really are. I mean, there were times where I'm not going to lie, I didn't get anything out of it because I was like, what?
Yeah.
You go so fast. Because they go so fast, too. It was like the pace and everything. It was like a lot to keep up with.
So you see what I mean by institutions need to do better with regards to, like, it can't just be so, so black and white. But I love those insights. I think they're fantastic insights, and good on you. Good on you for getting through and finishing it. And I think it's also one of those things where it's like, it can be inspiring for people watching. It doesn't have to be college. They could complete, like in Australia, we have TAFE. They could complete a course at different levels of tertiary, just getting a skill, getting a trade, seeing it through, knowing it's going to be hard, knowing how to navigate it. I mean, like you understand that, in just sharing that story, can actually impact people's lives, as in, if put it this way, let's say someone's watching right now, they neurodivergent one way or another, and I don't think I'd be able to learn anything or complete a course or go to college or, go to here or go to there. What would you say to them?
Just start. I think it's so easy to say, I need to do this big goal, or I need to accomplish this whole thing. But it's start small. If you're going to do a class, give yourself credit if you can get through that class. I mean, not even making it through the whole semester. I mean, if you get a good grade on a class, I mean, I'm not going to lie, I didn't get full straight A's. I was never a straight A student, and that's okay too. College doesn't have to be the form of achievement. I think there's so many other things that can measure out achievement, really based on just starting something that you're passionate about and seeing that through. That's what I think it kind of comes down to.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell us about this your circling the drain moment. That's an Australian way of saying near-death experience. And these, I know that these things can really change the trajectory of your life when you have these types of experiences. So I'd love to know where you think you were in your life prior to this kind of moment, and how that changed where you are now. Tell us this story.
Picture March 15th, 2020, a day before the world shuts down, and your friends are like, hey, you want to go to a party? And you're in college, and you're like, sure, why not? Then your best friend's like, actually, I don't really want to be here. I was like, okay, that's fine. You can go. I'll stay. And then at the end of the night, the guy you like is like, hey, you want to come back with us? And I was like, sure, what's one small car ride? No big deal. So got in the backseat middle. We were pulling onto the main street, and all of a sudden I saw we were about to die, but I didn't have my seatbelt on until I was 3 seconds before the accident. And because I remember everyone was screaming we're gonna die, this is it, all this stuff. And I just remember my life flashing and just the adrenaline and just all of that. I can't even explain it. It was just this feeling of oh my gosh, this is literally about to be it. Grab my seatbelt. Somehow everyone's alive. I don't go flying through the windshield, but everyone's injured. Everyone's going to the hospital. They're bringing the police over. My mom's coming. It was a whole thing. And so from that night on, because I was also in the hospital, when I was in the hospital, they were waiting to do a scan of my brain because they didn't know if I had a brain bleed. And because of that, I think that was really, I honestly think this is when it kind of started, the wheels started turning in my brain, and I didn't even fully realize it yet, because I was, I'm sitting there, I'm waiting, and I'm like, is this going to be it? Am I going to die? I had no idea what was about to happen. And so it was kind of just this moment of wait, how am I alive right now? And I remember when my mom got there, I gave her the biggest hug of my life. I was terrified. I was so shook. I didn't want to get in the car. I didn't want to I was I can't do this. And so we were leaving the hospital, and my mom's like, you need to get in the car. And I was like, no, I can't do it. I can't do it. And literally had to talk to me for 3 minutes, be like, honey, get in the car. We're gonna be okay. Just because you were in one car accident doesn't mean that being in the car the whole time is gonna be horrible. And after that, I think I really realized how precious life is and how much of a gift it is to be able to use our voice, because the truth is not everyone has the chance to use their voice because their life gets taken too soon. And I think it's such a amazing opportunity we have, and I think sometimes it just requires you to fight the courage and just and block out all the imposter syndrome of what are people going to say, what are people going to think, because you can't think about that. You have to think about the fact of I want to help people not feel as horrible as I did.
In other words, the things that were holding you back prior to that moment, that life-changing moment from using your voice, the thing that you could have used your voice prior, but there was something stopping you from being who you wanted to be, are these types of things. And so in a way, that idea of this was a horrible situation to be in, I could have died, you couldn't have picked a worse seat. You couldn't have picked a worse seat in the car. But yeah, I've got this, this chance now to stuff it. I could have been dead. Stuff it. I might as well just be me. It's a great experience, but I'm assuming you try to use your time now when you talk to people to let them know that they shouldn't wait till they almost die.
Yeah, absolutely. I also think too with being a public speaker too, it's like for so long I blocked my own way and. We all have blocks, like building blocks of our lives, and mine for so long was anxiety and depression and all these negative things. And then I realized that I could rebuild my blocks into positivity, into adaptability, into resilience, and really just figure out, wait a second, I can get through it. I can make it through this. How did I don't know how I'm still here, but I have this opportunity, so I'm not going to waste it because I know what it's like to struggle silently. I know what it's like to be the person in the room who goes home crying in your bed the rest of the night and no one knows. I know all of that. And so I just really kind of wanted to hopefully inspire people to say, hey, I can stand up too. I can use my voice too. If they want to write a book, don't let anything stop you, and I think that was the biggest thing is like, I got in my way for so long and then I finally stopped blocking it. And I was like, we're going to go full send and we're going to try to help even one person. And that's how it all started.
And how do you think that experience has helped you? Because I would assume, you're not trying to be kind of one-sided here. You would still have struggles, like we're human. How do you think that experience has helped you, navigate? So whether it's anxiety or, mental health things or challenges in your life, I'm assuming you are still someone who still has to go through things and navigate yourself through things. So how has that made it easier for you? And you must still experience these down times or moments or anxieties or issues, and you obviously got better tools now.
Yeah, not gonna lie, just because I speak about, all these things that I've overcome doesn't mean I don't have my days. It doesn't mean that I don't have my moments where I doubt myself or tell myself that I can't do something, But I think the difference now is I will call my family and talk about it, because the thing is even though I was close with them before, I pushed them away. But now it's like, if I'm having a bad day, it's like, oh, like, what's going on? Like, let's talk about it. And then if I'm like, I'm sad, and then, my sister or my dad or mom will be like, okay, like, what can we do? And so it's basically about like figuring out like a solution to like the feeling. And so I think that coping mechanism of being able to open up and talk is a huge thing. But I also think that, really just going to the gym and trying to be healthy and staying consistent, I think that's a big thing too, because when you're really, really depressed, you're not thinking about your health. You're not thinking about how I'm going to take care of myself. Honestly, I thought, I don't care if I die. That was honestly how horrible I was to myself. And looking back now, I'm like, I need to always have, you always have to have like your water, which I have right here, and like, you have to make sure you're taking care of yourself, because your mental health is just as important as your physical health, if not more important.
It goes hand in hand, really, doesn't it? It is the same thing. It's holistic. And I think what's really interesting, or I guess from what you were just saying, and I agree, your first experience, I guess when you talked about your friend saving you, that's very reactive, right? You were allowing yourself to have no power in the situation, and but for someone intervening, you might have taken your life, right? And then you were put yourself in a car, and but for God intervening or whoever. When now what you're talking about, really what you've learned is it's about a proactive approach. You know what makes you happy, what lights you up, what gets you going, and these are the things that you do. Is that kind of a good way of looking at it? It's about being proactive when these things happen.
Yeah, I do think, like you said, proactive is a good thing, but also something I did realize too is find what you're passionate about. When you find what you're passionate about in your moments of you don't know what's going on, like I never in a million years thought that my passion would be writing and writing a book, but here we are. And, you know, I think that experience of just being able to like put the fingers to the keyboard and like write and just not have like any judgment, just write whatever I want. It was such a freeing thing that I didn't realize I needed it. So maybe there's something you don't know about yourself, which is exactly what happened to me. And you'll find out about it because you'll do it and you'll be like, wait, I didn't know that I was like, oh, I actually love writing. Okay.
And fair to say too, for a lot of people watching, it doesn't have to be turned into a career or a job. It's about leaning into your actual passions, finding out what your passion is, what you love doing, and allowing yourself the opportunity to do it, regardless of the judgment or whatever around you. I mean, that's really the key.
Oh, for sure. You know, finding something, you know, with singing too, or music, you know, I'll write my own songs or whatever. That's something I love to do, but I don't, you know, I'm not going to make a career of it. It's just something that I like love to do and passionate about, and something that makes me happy.
100%. Hey, I've really enjoyed chatting. Is there anything I've missed or anything you wanted to mention?
Well, I just would really say that, you know, keep holding on. And if you're listening to this and you actually are struggling immensely, don't wait till you get to a crisis. Call, you know, you can text, in America, you can text 988. Or call that number, but you know, it's the National Suicide Prevention Hotline. But honestly, like, take care of yourself. Like, go find a therapist. There's even those apps like Better Me or something. I know those apps and stuff people can, you know, find. But really, like, if you are really struggling, don't lie to yourself. Be honest with yourself. Be upfront with yourself, because I promise you, you'll live a more authentic version of your life. And really, you know, also too, like with speaking, you know, if anyone needs a speaker, you know, I absolutely love what I do. Nothing fills me more than when someone comes up to me after and is like, thank you, like that really helped me, or I feel so seen. So all you have to do is just go to my website, fill out the inquiry form, and then we'll get a date going.
Awesome. Hey, Carolyn, I hope you've enjoyed the chat. I've definitely enjoyed it. It's been so good. I really do appreciate like you being honest and open and vulnerable. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me.
I've got an incredible back catalogue of inspiring, moving, and deeply raw chats with neurodivergent people. So to check them out, go and check out my collaborations playlist.